Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today a very short introduction since I will talk about the Viltrox 85 1.8 Mark II for Fujifilm X mount. I would like to thank my friend Maurizio to give me this lens to test. This is a well-reviewed lens on the web with the old APS-C sensor, so I was curious to try it on the latest X-T5 40 million pixel APS-C sensor. This is a quite big and heavy lens, even compared to the 56 1.2 Mark I from Fujifilm. I don't have the 90 f2 from Fujifilm to compare it, but it's quite heavy. Thanks to the USB mount, I was able to update it to the latest Viltrox firmware version that was updated on the December 22. It was a specific release to the Fujifilm X-T5 autofocus compatibility. So without talking anymore, let's see some pictures. First of all, this time I will use the Adobe Camera Raw to check the raw files. Since the Capture One 23, at least the Fujifilm Expert version, is completely lacking any good profile for the Viltrox. As you can see here from the list is missing, there's no Viltrox available. And also is not able to read from the manufacturer profile the correct lens profile. Even if I click on Analyze for the get rid of the chromatic aberration, Capture One is not able to completely get rid of the chromatic aberration. You can see here a tiny bit of lateral chromatic aberration and here some purple fringing on the head of the swan. Here we are in Adobe Camera Raw, and you can see that even if the lens profile is set to default, is able to read the correct lens even if it is selected as a Fujifilm 85mm. But we can clearly see the difference between Camera One for lens profile and Adobe. You can see here the lateral chromatic aberration is nearly completely disappeared. And the purple fringes is just a tiny bit visible, but not as much as Capture One. You can also select the proper Viltrox lens profile here from the drop-down list. You can clearly see here Viltrox and find the 85 f2 Mark II. There's not so much difference between the two profiles looking at the chromatic aberration. But there's just a little difference on the overall management of the lens distortion. You can see here a tiny bit of movement on the central part of the image. I prefer the default lens profile, to be honest. If you want, you can download a lens profile from the Viltrox website if you have an older version of Adobe Camera Raw, but you also will not able to open the X-T5 raw files. Let's see some image quality samples. Starting at the full aperture f1.8, we have a very nice bokeh and very nice transition between the focus and autofocus zone. As details and sharpness is lacking a little bit, it appears to be a little bit of haziness on the image, on the high contrast like here. As chromatic aberration, we are still having a little bit of purple fringing, but just a tiny bit, and some lateral chromatic aberration, like here, even using the good lens profile from Adobe. Closing down to f2, we have a very nice quality here, good contrast and good sharpness, no more haze, and also the chromatic aberration as purple fringes disappeared. We have still a tiny bit of lateral chromatic aberration, but just barely visible. Stopping down to f2.8, we have more sharpness. Stopping down to f4, we have the best aperture of this lens. You can clearly see how much contrast and sharpness is available. No chromatic aberration at all. We can check the difference between f2 and f4 as a bokeh. Here is f2, here is f4, very big difference, still a very good transition on the bokeh. I will use f2 for portraits and f4 for landscapes. At f5 we start to have a little bit of diffraction, not so much, the overall quality is still good. And from f8 to f11 and f16 we have a lot more diffraction, and I will never use this aperture, to be honest. At the end, I really liked this lens, especially between f2 and f4. The bokeh is very nice, and also the transition from the focus and autofocus. The autofocus is quite good, is quick and silent, but sometimes can struggle a little bit to find the perfect focus. The lens right now is very cheap from the Viltrox store. Is about 370 euros and $399. Quite a good price, and I think it can be a good bargain if you find a second hand. Right now there's the very good 75 f1.2, but is nearly double the price, around 620 euros, $670. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please subscribe to my channel, follow me on the social media. Bye bye and take good photos.